All right, a pleasant good night to everybody. I am Christ, I am disciple, aka Anson Phillip, and we are going to have a stream, which is a very important stream in my opinion. Uh, and I want to, first of all, give all praise and thanks to the Most High God before I go on with this stream. Um, Blessings to everybody. As you can see from the name of the stream, it is uh, Zack Snyder's Justice League in IMAX. Why now is the best time for it to go into cinemas. And we're going to talk a little bit more about same related topic, but a little bit about restoring the Snyderverse and how this could fit into the equation. So I've been talking on Twitter a lot about this, but I really want to take a session here to basically discuss it even in more detail. Now, if you want to be a guest on here, you just can join. There's a link in the chat section there, somewhere in the chat section. I don't know if it's below, above. I believe it's below. Also, if you want to support this channel, the link is right there in the chat section, as well as in the description. Okay. All right. Having said that, the way how we're going to go about doing this, as always, we're going to start off with a scripture. I've given you the scripture there. And then afterwards, we're going to discuss why we're pushing for Zack Snyder's Justice League in IMAX globally this year to restore the Snyderverse. And we'll go into detail on that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Shout out to each one and every one of you who are seeing this link and is clicking on it and decided to join right now. This is the time we were supposed to begin. I'm going to take a short break before I go into those details and what I just told you. I just need to get a drink of water and I'll come right back to you guys. So I will get right into it. Okay. So just 1 second. I'm just going to step away and you guys can, fill up the chat. You can discuss, you can give your opinions, etc. as you see fit. Feel free to start talking right now. Coming right back. All right, so we're getting into it. As you can see, this topic, why push for Zack Snyder's Justice League in IMAX globally this year to restore the Snyderverse? We'll talk about that. But first, let's look at Psalms 128, verses 1 and 2. And we begin always with scripture. Most High God comes first. How happy are those who fear the Lord, who follow his ways. You will enjoy the fruit of your labor. How happy you will be. How rich will be your life. It seems vague, but it really is a principle which we'll discuss in a little bit more detail here. And if this can come to fruition, really will be a win-win for everybody. So let's get into the topic. Why push for Zack Snyder's Justice League in IMAX globally this year to restore the Snyderverse? First of all, I was discussing this with Leroy Kong, and I also discussed this with another friend of mine named Damian Anton Vincent. Why this makes sense, okay? So some of the things that I say here, I've already discussed with them, but some of the things I said here, I also put up on Twitter. But some of the things I'm about to say, really, I haven't discussed with anyone. So here we go. So the first reason is because putting Zack Snyder's Justice League into theaters has happened before. In IMAX, that is. The heads of Warner Brothers, the co-heads of Warner Brothers, which would be Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca, they met with Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder made a request to do a full circle event, or a SnyderCon, where there would be a Q&A. They would be showing off his movies, his trilogy. It's not his Justice League trilogy, but it's his trilogy. And there would be a Q&A after, where fans could meet and they could have this special event and they can ask questions on it. And the money would be raised for suicide prevention. It was early this year. Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca, they agreed for Warner Bros. To even assist by even putting some money towards the event, etc., and resources. So they were very helpful in that. And as you know, they are the head of Warner Bros. Pictures. They're not the head of DC. So James Gunn had to agree to that. So that means that James Gunn was also implicit in Zack Snyder having this event. So it was greenlit and it was shown in IMAX. Zack Snyder's Justice League was part of the event, and Zack Snyder's Justice League in the last day of the event was shown in IMAX. And some very fortunate people got to see it in IMAX. So this has happened before, and the movie in color was seen in IMAX. Now, it was never seen in color in IMAX before. This event happened earlier on this year. So why can't it not happen again, but in a global sense throughout the world? Why can it not be released globally? Because it happened before. James Gunn agreed to it. The heads of Warner Bros. Pictures also agreed to it. So, and they didn't just agree with it. They also provide certain funding and certain facilitated certain things so that the event could happen. So if that happened once, why can it not happen again? So that's the first reason, as you can see scrolling across the screen. The second one is that DC is just not performing. It hasn't performed this year. It hasn't performed last year. I mean, it did perform last year with one movie, and that was the Batman movie. It had reasonable success, but no other movie last year performed when it came to DC. And the year before that, again, it did not perform. The only thing, the only shining light in DC in 2021 was Zack Snyder's Justice League, which was not put into cinemas. And so, you know, and then in 2020, it also didn't perform, you know. It didn't perform in 2020. You have to go all the way back to 2019 when Joker came out and also Shazam came out that it actually performed. So it hasn't been performing since 2020. For 3 years straight, it hasn't been performing. And the DCU, the universe itself, hasn't been performing since 2019. So what orders for this is that with all these flops that have been happening, it's only making it more and more difficult. As I told you guys, when you're trying to do a reboot, it's very difficult for the first movie in the reboot to do well. We look at Superman. When Superman was rebooted with Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, that movie had to deal with the way how people pictured Superman, first of all, which the last movie was a flop. And DC had gone through 3 successive flops with Superman before Man of Steel was able to get off the ground. Okay, so that movie had an uphill battle to deal with, just dealing with that, not to mention the press and the media and the pro-Marvel world they were in at the time that didn't appreciate the movie for what it was. And so it had to deal with that as well. And it managed to still break through all of that and make a profit, a decent profit. And mind you, another reboot was the rebooting of the Batman franchise with The Dark Knight. And Batman Begins also had to fight that uphill battle of a flop concerning Batman. And Batman and Robin was the last flop. That happened a couple of years before. And it had to overcome that. So, I mean, Man of Steel did exceptionally well because Superman was not seen as an interesting character. Zack Snyder made him interesting. Zack Snyder overcame a lot because you're talking about Man of Steel came after 3 Superman flops in the movie, whereas Batman Begins came after 1 Batman flop, right? Just 1 Batman flop. So Christopher Nolan actually had an easier job tackling Batman than Zack Snyder and David Goyer and even Christopher Nolan had tackling Superman. And they managed to make Superman work. They managed to make Superman make money. Whereas the critics with their backward thinking couldn't see what was happening. So what I'm saying to you is, this is the worst ever DC has performed. DC has to overcome what looks like 7 DCEU flops because the universe is established. And now we have 7 DCEU flops. We won't go into why they flopped and all of that. This is not necessary right now. What's important is to understand the situation with DC. As some people say, DC is dead right now, and it is. The brand is dead because all of these movies people are not going to see them. And the same phenomenon, I believe, is going to happen with Blue Beetle. People are not going to go see Blue Beetle. The brand is all but dead because there's just zero interest in these movies. And these movies are costing the studio a lot of money, sorry. And putting this into perspective, James Gunn, from what I've heard from someone who has told me on Twitter, James Gunn needs a win as DC's head. Warner Brothers is performing. Warner Brothers Pictures is performing. Abdi and DeLuca, they've had 4 straight movies that have been hits, right? We have Barbie, we had Rising Dead, which, if I'm not mistaken, that is a horror movie. Then we had Creed 3, and we also had Monsters. So they've had 4 hits this year. They made over $1 billion easily. So Warner Brothers Pictures is doing well. The heads, Abdi and DeLuca, are doing a fine job with Warner Brothers Pictures. And if you do think, they did also a fine job with DC because Black Adam did pretty well. In fact, the best performing DC movie to date of all the flops has been Black Adam, and there's a lot I want to say about that, but we will get to it. So the point is, James Gunn needs a win. If he doesn't get a win, he's gone. All right. But it is the same James Gunn, even though he didn't attend the event, who allowed for Zack Snyder to have his full circle event in which Zack Snyder's Justice League was seen in IMAX for the first time, in IMAX in color. So they've set the tone for Zack Snyder Justice League to be put globally into cinemas, because that was like a test run. So if Abdi, DeLuca, and Gunn all agree, or if James Gunn doesn't agree, it's not a problem. It just means we won't get Zack Snyder Justice League in cinemas this year. But as soon as James Gunn is gone, we'll get Zack Snyder Justice League. So one way or the other, if James Gunn wants to save his job, I think he should just let it happen. If James Gunn and get a win, because he would be credited as the head of DC that allowed Zack Snyder's Justice League to go into cinemas. The movie will perform. No if, buts, or maybes. I've been looking almost the entirety. I've been on just sustained loop watching at The Flash, which I'll get into all of that too. The Flash movie and all of that. I'll get into that in more detail because we have the time. I'm going for 2 hours. We're already 14 minutes in. If you want to be a guest on this, don't forget, you can just jump in as a guest. I have no problem. I welcome all guests. I welcome all people into this program. But I don't want to diverge right now from the point I'm making that James Gunn needs that win. And so if he needs to get a win, he needs to be in the plus column. It really would do him a load of good to take down the ego, take down whatever plans he had, and to let Zack Snyder's Justice League go into cinemas this year. I think it just makes absolute sense to make that happen. And he needs a win badly because there's several different reasons why he needs a win. The first thing is, if he can get any DC movie, I don't care if it's a DC, I don't care what it is. He just needs a DC movie to win, because if they keep on flopping like this, people are going to expect DC movies to flop, and they're not going to be interested. Even if the story is great, they're not going to be interested. They're going to go to the cinema and see them. It's a horrible precedent, okay? And it's a deep hole. And if you put Zack Snyder's Justice League into cinemas, people always remember the latest thing you do. You may have screwed up and done a lot of stupid things in the past, but if you do one good thing, people can forgive you for it because you did the right thing. And in this case, I will never forget Jason Kilar. I will never forget all the people who allowed Zack Snyder's Justice League to breathe air and actually exist. Okay? I will never forget these people. Okay? You know, Toby Emmerich didn't have a choice. Jason Kilar kind of came in and kind of changed the atmosphere. Even though a lot of key people who got the Snyder Cut into HBO Max, at the time it was called HBO Max. It was going to be called Max, actually. And then it became HBO Max, and then it turned back to Max. But some of the key people were fired, actually. They were removed. Their jobs were removed for making Zack Snyder Justice League. I want to just give a lot of credence to these people. There are a number of them, of 4 people who were responsible for Zack Snyder Justice League actually existing. And a 5th one was recently removed. That was the lady who said that Zack Snyder Justice League was a global phenomenon. These people also have been removed. But all of these people contributed to that happening. So I'm so grateful it exists because I have a copy of it and I put it on loop all the time. But what I'm saying is that here is another opportunity for at least the management of DC, particularly James Gunn. This is his chance to hit a home run, okay? By putting Zack Snyder's Justice League into IMAX, obviously he's hinting that the Snyderverse will be restored. Now, there's all kinds of different views on that, you know, on the Snyderverse, etc. But what we are specifically speaking about is Zack Snyder's vision and seeing it to its end. And so if James Gunn would allow that to happen and integrate the elements of the Snyderverse, let it run. And I will explain all of this because, you know what, let me go to the next point. So the next point here is that the strike that is happening delays movie production. Okay? The strike right now that's happening is delaying movie production. So certain movies that need to be done right now with the writers and the Writers Guild strike, with the Actors Guild strike that's happening, as well as now we're having unionized VFX people from Disney. They're unionizing and they're getting ready to strike as well. And let me just say, more power to the creatives. More power to the creators. More power to you. You realize you've been played. They've been treating you bad. They've been giving you bad business, creators. But power to you. Strike on. I support the strike. But having said that, the strike is affecting production. So movies like The Batman, the sequel, movies like, you know, various movies out there are now delayed. And we don't know when these movies will ever see the light of day if the strike keeps on going. So this means that not only is James Gunn's Superman movie, we don't know when it's going to come out, if it's ever going to come out, but we also have the air cut. Now, people say, well, VFX people are all that needed to brush up the air cut. Yeah, but that's if Warner Brothers wants to put out money to pay VFX people. They're cutting right now. These big companies, these big corporations are cutting VFX people. That's why VFX people are not even getting they're not even getting fully paid for what they're supposed to be doing. So there's all of this kind of craziness going on. That's why they're even unionizing and they might strike. So in an atmosphere like this, you cannot right now think about unfinished movies, right? Any movies that are unfinished and contracts are not completed, you know, they're going to be on hold, right? Everything's on hold except the completed movies. What movies completed? Not the Air Cut, not the Batfleck movie, right? Not the Zack Snyder sequels, not the Wonder Woman movie, not the Henry Cavill Superman movie. So that's why I say to people, you need to focus on what is doable, and what is doable right now 100% has nothing to do with the strike. Can happen. Can be put into theaters today. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Let's keep moving. So I've just explained it to you guys that point number 4, there are too many DC flops to recover from by just any movie going out there. It has to be something that's guaranteed to get the public's interest. Okay? It's something the audience must be demanding. It must be something the audience is willing to pay for so that it could boost the DC brand and it could also boost the next set of DC movies that are coming out. Okay? People remember the bitter taste of movies they've seen. The last thing people see is what they remember. You don't want the last image of The Flash to be from the Flash movie. You don't want the last image of Aquaman to be what it was from the Flash movie. You don't want the last image of Batman to be that image that you saw in the Flash movie. You understand? That is why after Blue Beetle, I don't want to speak bad on Blue Beetle. I'm not going to leave that alone. After Blue Beetle is released, I've been saying this on Twitter. No matter how well Blue Beetle performs, whether it's good or bad, I'm not going to say anything on Blue Beetle, let it run its course. Whatever happens, you must put out Zack Snyder's Justice League after. Because the damage that was done in the Flash, and let me just say this about the Flash movie. No, I'll leave that for later on. Okay, so I'll leave that for later down the pathway. But what I'm saying is when you put Zack Snyder's Justice League after The Flash, Aquaman comes out in December this year, I believe. So put Zack Snyder's Justice League in before Aquaman. It will remind you of how good Aquaman was. It will remind you of how good Batman was. And the showstopper, the show stealer, I'm telling you, the greatest moment in comic book movies, in my opinion, was watching The Flash run and reverse time. And it was so memorable. I still cry to this day watching it. It's such an emotional piece. And I can understand why it won Oscar Fanchero moment. I can understand. I clearly can understand. It is one of the most magnificent pieces of work I have seen. And it is an emotional piece of work. It's not just action. It's not just him running so fast he reversed time or whatever. No. That moment was a precious moment, connecting this young man to his father, a young man to his sort of surrogate father in Bruce Wayne, two people he esteemed so highly, and to hear him echo what they said, and not only that, add to what they said, was something that even me, as a 48-year-old man, I feel the evolution of someone learning and internalizing something and then applying it, and achieving what the person never thought they could achieve. And to me, that is the essence of superhero movies. that moment in Zack Snyder, that moment captivated everything about a superhero movie. To me, it's a piece I can just loop and watch over and over, and it still emotionally affects me. I don't know if it's because of the visualization, how it's visualized, how he's running into the past, how he's bringing things back together. I don't know what it was about the piece. I can't specifically speak about it. And this is the thing about Zack Snyder as a visual director. He says so much in his visual illustration. He speaks visually, you know. And that's the thing about Zack Snyder. And that's one of the things, you know, they say, oh, he's great at visuals. It's not just he's great at visuals, my friend. His visuals speak. It's like when Patty Jenkins did No Man's Land, you know, and Wonder Woman was revealing herself. It was a transcendency. You understand what I'm saying? That was the Flash running back in time. It was a transcendency. And then the moments and what she was doing and how she was reacting and everything, those action pieces speak volumes about her mental state, her attitude, why you saw the revelation of who Wonder Woman really is, what she's really about, all in that action piece without verbally saying it. When you think of Batman and BVS, he never had to scare people. He didn't have to tell people he was Batman. Of course, he'd been in Gotham so long that they knew who he was and they knew his legacy, right? But besides that point, he looked intimidating. You understand what I'm saying? You just see him and you were intimidated. I felt intimidated watching Ben Affleck on the screen. You know, he was intimidating. You didn't have to. You didn't have to see the other actors play off of him to feel the intimidation. You know, the other Batmans before and after Ben Affleck, they had to show you. They had to show you, you know, and the other actors had to play off of them and show that they were intimidated. This Batman, he don't know how to do nothing. He just had to stand there. he just looked intimidating. We were introduced to him the first time in BVS, and it was like straight out of a horror movie. You immediately were intimidated. Your heart rate was beating hard. You know, everything. And then you see him and the music and everything, and you were just totally intimidated. Right? That's what Zack Snyder is good at doing. The nonverbals and minimalistic verbals. But the verbals that are spoken have many different meanings and many different layers. That's what he's good at. He's really good at it. You know? So because of that, and the way how he visually shows these heroes, which has a lot of details in them, visually shows these heroes. You know, people say, you know, they try to keep it simple. So they say, oh, Zack Snyder says this looks cool. It looks so cool, right? They try to be sarcastic and condescending about, but the coolness that he's doing, it has so much detail in it. It's much more than just cool. It's saying something. It's saying something. And he speaks through the art. It's not just art for art's sake. It's not cool just for cool's sake. He says that. Zack Snyder is one of those guys that underplays what he's really saying because he doesn't really want to tell you what he's really saying. Right? So it cool. Yeah, it sounds cool, but he's not being flippant. Okay? He's very specific about what he wants. He's very specific about why this look is the way it is. The angle at which the shot is. It's not just to imitate the comic, but it's to capture the spirit of what was in the comic. It's to capture the mindset of what the writer was thinking at the moment, or his understanding of what he thought how he felt about how the writer was conveying this thing. And so that's the idea behind it, because of course it's from his perspective, we're seeing everything, right? So why I say this is because the Flash movie had elements, I saw bits and pieces of it, had elements of what we saw in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay? We saw the Flash begin to emit electrical charge from himself. That's how he charged the mother box when he ran inside of the ship. That's how he charged Cyborg to get into the mother boxes, right? So he charged the mother box directly to revive Superman, and he charged Cyborg to charge up the mother boxes so that he could get inside the mother boxes and integrate with them. In The Flash, spoilers, he masters the art and he's teaching the younger Flash how to emit electrical charge. And that's how he took down, he actually destroyed a Kryptonian, which Kryptonians are very powerful. Okay, so in the Flash movie, he actually took this to another level, and you saw him actually like Palpatine, you know, when he becomes the evil emperor, he's shooting out charge from him. He's emitting charge because he generates a bunch of charge by moving fast, very extremely fast. Okay, and he emits that charge, and he was able to take down the big Kryptonian that came to dominate the world. And when I looked at the Flash movie, the concept behind it, the idea behind it is actually good. It's a great idea. Andy Muschietti had a great idea. They had a great plan. It went loopy-loop. It went bad because the visuals are not that great. But I have so much to say on that. Okay. But first, before we go into that, point number 5, and it's a lot of words to read through and to understand, but I'm going to try and give you an idea of what I am seeing and why it could work for DC. Why Zack Snyder's Justice League in IMAX can restore the Snyderverse is because there are a lot, because it's the DCEU, or the DCEU is what I call it. There's a lot of elements in the DCEU that now have been put in place. Even though these movies have been flopping, we've gotten characters that have been added to the universe, right? And there are so many opportunities because of that, but not only characters. We've also seen, because if you go and watch the Flash movie again, there's the opportunity for the Snyderverse now to be a part of this multiverse that they established in the Flash. Zack Snyder's Justice League spoke about the multiverse, but in the multiverse itself that was seen in the Flash, there was a glimpse of Henry Cavill's Superman in the Flash fighting the Flash, and that, at that point in time, could have been from the Snyderverse. I'm not saying it is from the Snyderverse. I'm saying it could have been. It was a digital thing. And you see the different multiverses, and you hear General Zod speaking about, because the Flash moved so fast, he ended up being at this point in the multiverse, or whatever it is, kind of like a bubble thing. And you see the Flash talking to the younger Flash. And while they're talking, you're hearing different voices. You hear General Zod talking to Kara Zor-El, basically the same things he said to young Kal-El. Same thing, either you die or I do. But in this case, you know, the Kryptonian army's still there, and, you know, they were not removed to the Phantom Zone and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different. A lot more Kryptonians around, right? And they give you this perspective where Supergirl is the only Kryptonian taking on all these Kryptonians, right? And it's incredible because the story actually tells you where that direction could go and how that world gets destroyed in this alternate version, which is interesting because Kara doesn't survive. And the Batman in that world doesn't survive either. So that world fails. But what's important to understand is that that world, it failed. So that means the Flash has to go somewhere else, okay? Which leaves the open door for the Snyderverse to still exist. And what I'm saying is that why I say the Snyderverse can still be restored is because while Gunn moves forward with his plans for the DCU, he calls it the DCU, I want to say he shouldn't abandon anything from the past DCEU. I think he is moving forward whatever he's doing. But I believe, like with Star Wars franchise or with the Transformers franchise, which has not discredited Michael Bay's work, or with the Star Wars franchise, which does not discredit The Force Awakens, but you have a Rogue One, you have a Solo film. You know, you can go back and forwards in time. Follow me now. Back and forwards in time. James Gunn, when I was listening to an interview with him, he was saying that, you know, DC and Marvel, they still haven't done a good job of giving varied stories, meaning varying in tone, varying in style, varied stories, because he thinks comic book movies should not all be one thing. People get bored, they'll get fatigued. And he's right. Say what you want about the guy, he is right about that. You do need to have, but you must understand what makes your studio or the history of your studio, so that James Gunn is a comedian, okay? He makes comedic movies. This is what he does. He has produced movies which are horror, and that's cool, but he really makes comedic movies. He has a sense of humor. His humor is sometimes extreme. I'm not going to go into his personal life. I'm not going to go into his background, because there are two things that you need to understand with me. Everybody has skeletons in their closet. Nobody's perfect, right? I don't know if the man's repented from the way, how he conducted himself. I've heard things I'm not going to say about him. I'm just not going to speak that about him. What I'm going to say about him is this, okay? What I'm going to say about him is this. I am looking at his performance as the head of DC to get DC back up and popping. DC's been in a slump, at least the DCU or the DCEU, whichever you want to call it. I prefer to call it the DCU once you came out of the Snyderverse. You know, that's how I look at it. But it provided, the thing about it is it still provided variety. Okay, this thing has become something else. So even if James Gunn is moving forward with whatever he's doing, he can actually interconnect it with the Snyderverse. Make the Snyderverse a part of the multiverse, which is part of the multiverse. It's there, so that Zack Snyder can continue his stories going forward, just like the Star Wars or the Transformers movies. But it's an alternate timeline to what Gunn is doing. And as a result, though, whether something's crossing over in the both timelines or whatever, it helps to establish the multiverse. Why this is important that you don't abandon or cancel or reboot anything from before is because it's too much before. If you've established too much stuff, you've established Harley Quinn, you've established all these characters to start with. And then, in addition to establishing all these characters, you have all these actors who did a splendid job. I'm not going to lie. When I look at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, that man was impressive as Black Adam. He was a hell of a Black Adam. Okay, he was a hell of a Black Adam. He looked great, impressive. You know, there were certain things that I didn't like about Black Adam, but he was impressive. Okay, and the story has a good. It has something to it. He wasn't a hero. He just wasn't a hero. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to deal with people he cared about. All right? He wasn't supposed to be the hero. So that story has some merit in it. And what I'm saying is there's meat on the bones. What we have to do is integrate the bones together. We have to integrate the meat together, which leads me to my next point. So anyway, the point is with Star Wars, while we had The Force Awakens, and then we had Rogue One, and then we had The Last Jedi. I believe that's how it went, right? So you had Star Wars Episode 8, then you had a Rogue One story in between, and then you had Star Wars, and I think the Rogue One was before. It was an earlier time, like before the New Hope, between the prequels and the New Hope. And then you had Star Wars Episode 8, which was The Last Jedi, which a lot of people didn't like. And then we had Star Wars Episode 9. And in between that, I think we had Solo or something, which is, again, a movie going back into time. My point being, you can use the timeline, you can vary the timeline. So what I'm saying is, take, for instance, James Gunn's Superman Legacy, right? I'm going to show you guys something. James Gunn's Superman Legacy could be in the future. It could be a futuristic story, which is, and Zack Snyder's Justice League could be in the past. In other words, we could have a Superman after the legacy of Superman, the first Superman. Now you could do a complete reboot, but I say ride the wave. I say go with a Superman after this legacy of Superman before. That will establish the world of superheroes. People would have been comfortable with the world of superheroes because they already experienced superheroes. Even though the first Superman's either dead or whatever, right? My point being, if you let everything flow together, you get momentum off of the past. And even if you're making a comedy or whatever it is you're making, people can connect with that. And how you remind them is by you do the past movie and then you have the Gunn movie. And people are saying, well, that would be a competition between Gunn and Snyder. No, it won't. And I'm going to explain to you why. Was there a competition between Rogue One and The Last Jedi? Hell no. Was it a competition between Force Awakens and Rogue One? Hell no. It was its own thing. You see what I'm saying? And you feed off of that. So what I'm saying is that the Snyder, okay, so let's go through a couple of things so you understand what I'm saying. So if we look at right now the Snyderverse, and we look at the Hamadaverse, or let's just call it the DCEU, without Zack Snyder vision, right? The DCEU since Justice League 2017 has basically been Zack Snyder stuff without his vision, right? David Ayer's vision didn't fully actualize with the Suicide Squad as well, but from Justice League 2017 onwards down to what we currently had, or last flop there, The Flash, they've been operating along the lines of Justice League 2017. This is where it diverged, right? Zack Snyder's Justice League and Justice League 2017, they diverged, right? So basically, you've been feeding off of Justice League 2017. The studio said that was canon. I don't know if they still hold that opinion. And you saw it. You saw it in The Flash, right? But you also saw glimpses of what could be the Snyderverse in The Flash. It opened the door to say, hey, there could still be the Snyderverse somewhere around here, right? So what I'm saying is that James Gunn should open that door by letting Zack Snyder's Justice League go into cinemas. Then he can say, well, the DCU really, you don't necessarily have to say that Zack Snyder Justice League is canon or Justice League 2017 is canon. We got both of them. It was the multiverse. Bam. Okay. And then from there now, you can now tell stories, and you can either go to here or you can go to there. You can pick wherever you want to go. The directors have more freedom to wriggle up and do what they do, and everybody's happy. Right? But you need to have like a thread of continuity going through each movie. And I think he tried to pitch that to Warner Brothers. I don't know if it actually fully worked out. Now, here's the thing. Let's go to point number 6, which really doesn't have anything to do with my last trend of thought, but nonetheless. The studio has lost over $1 billion in the flops that have happened in the DCEU, whatever you want to call it. Okay, they've lost a lot of money. They could have just done this. They could have just done the sequels to the Snyder Cut. Then they could have done a Cyborg movie. They could have done a Green Lantern movie with all that money that they lost. Those monies would actually have made them money, so they wouldn't even have lost the money, right? It had put them in a situation where they were in dire straits until Warner Bros. Pictures really started picking it up and they started earning money. Warner Bros. Pictures has made over $1 billion this year already. Now, here's the thing I'm saying. Zack Snyder's Justice League being put into cinemas, it won't affect their bottom line. At max, this movie cost them 20, 30 million more. All right? Because of advertising, distribution, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not. Maybe not even that. Maybe it costs even cheaper, because when you re-release a movie, let's say you re-release Titanic. I think Titanic made like 40 million. And so to re-release it is not a big deal because, it's not going to cost that much more money. People already know it. whatever select cinemas or wherever. So it actually makes profit because you don't have to produce it anymore. You didn't have to put all the money, but of course it costs about 70 million to produce it, right? Make back that money, put it in the cinemas. At least you're going to make a profit versus all these movies that have been flopping. And Aquaman is going to flop if you don't do something. At least save Aquaman. Let Aquaman be in the plus column for a change. Let's not forget, James Wan was in all kinds of mental breakdown and physical breakdown. It looks like he was in the hospital in critical condition. This guy been suffering. And the problem with these movies is they've been changing them up so much. They've been changing, not focus. Just do a damn story. Let the director do his thing. And then I'm going to come to that point too. I'm going to come to all of those things because I got the points written down here. Right? You've been changing up the story so much, you know, and James Gunn be doing a horrible job. I know you're a comedian. I know you want to make a joke, but bruh, you are dragging these characters we love so much into the ground. We don't like that. So that's why a lot of people, I understand James Gunn's a comedian. I get it. And I know comedians make fun of icons. I get it. But some things are in poor taste. Some things people who love these icons so much are not going to find funny. And you're seeing it. The audience is rejecting this stuff. Blue Beetle, the advertisement for Blue Beetle was Batman's a fascist. And the guy might be making a joke, and maybe to him, Batman is a fascist and all of that. George Lopez is a very good comedian, and, you know, comedians like to start off with a controversial statement, and then they like to elaborate on why they say what they say. But what I'm saying is, though, you got to understand something. It don't order well for your audience. It's just hearing. You might think it's hilarious. You might think it's funny in its context, probably. But it ain't funny to the general audience just hearing that in a trailer. They're like, what the hell? It sounds like you're taking shots at the characters, because Zach and Patty said, and even David Ayer said they had respect for these characters. And then y'all come and just, nah, we ain't gonna have no respect for them. We're gonna just disrespect them. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? I don't understand. Yeah, you funny, but take your time. Not even David Sandberg did that until Shazam 2, where Wonder Woman had the man's head on her. You know what I'm saying? Gotta have respect for your characters. But I'm saying, Zack Snyder's Justice League, you know, you put it in cinemas, if you do make a loss, it ain't gonna be hundreds of millions of dollars lost. That much we do know. So that's a go right there. And I know DeLuca and Abdi and DeLuca know that. Okay. And I believe if push comes to shove, that's their backup plan. So if push comes to shove and Gunn can't get anything going, they're going to put it in cinemas. They would love you to say that. And it doesn't, even putting it in cinemas doesn't mean necessarily that, and they would be one up in the previous regime because they would actually do something better than the previous regime. And it'll make, of course, fans hopeful for restoring the Snyderverse, even though that may not happen immediately. What I mean by that is, yeah, we'll get a Ayer cut next year for sure. But it depends on the strike and when that strike ends for them to actually set up a Zack Snyder Justice League 2. And if they have a Zack Snyder Justice League 2, that would be a great thing. And I'm telling you, man, Zack Snyder sets up his movies for the successive movie to succeed. So what I'm saying is maybe they won't have a Flashpoint anymore, but what they may have is Final Crisis. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. Okay. Point number 7. This is a lot of words coming across the screen, but I'm going to read it for you. They can retroactively fix bad movies and reintroduce them into the cinema before upcoming movies. So you can actually start making money by playing back the previous movies, kind of like what they did with Zack Snyder's Justice League, but they didn't put it in theaters. Why I say this is because I want to show you guys something. I want to show you guys something. Okay. Okay, if you look at point number 7 there, I'm going to show you guys something. I got my other phone here. All right. I want you to go to Boan Edits, Bauanedits. There's another one called Malawi or something like that, Malawi or something like that. They also did a great job with the end of Black Adam. Okay, fans who do studio work on posted up these edits on YouTube. And I want to show you guys a piece of it. I'm actually going to use some audio here as well. You guys can go see it for yourself. It's fantastic. It improves the movie tremendously. And all these people did was they did some color grading. So they changed the color grading of the movie. And they also changed the musical score for the movie. I wish you guys had headphones to hear this. But I want to show you guys something here, man. You'll see this? So the name of the channel is there. Right over here, right there. But you can't see, it's kind of blurry. It is what it is. All right, it's going to be a little blurry. But let me play it for you guys now.
Zod.
Carla Zora, we've been waiting for you.
Giant and this murder are our responsibility too. Hey, don't think about them. Okay, calm down. We're just gonna start with those guys over there. And yeah, they're Kryptonian and we won't be able to kill them, but we can slow them down for her. One at a time.
Terraforming has begun. This world must die so that ours may live again.
So the music that they're using is Hans Zimmer's Man of Steel, instead of using the music from what they used in the Flash movie.
Krypton is gone, Zod.
Your uncle, Jor-El, hid the key to Krypton's rebirth inside a Kryptonian child. All the genetic material needed to start again. Coded inside the DNA, then sent to Earth in an escape pod.
He's not here. You have failed.
We found him. We intercepted his pod. But your cousin was not the one we needed. You are the one, Kara Zor-El. It is your blood we must harvest.
What did you do to Kal-El?
Your sacrifice that will allow Krypton to live again.
What did you do?
The infant did not survive.
Okay. Now it looks much better than it's there. It actually is a dramatic improvement, and the music, the score, everything is dramatically improved. This is why I'm saying that by editing the movie over and by simply adjusting the color grading as well as adjusting the musical score, you actually can get a movie that's somewhat, I'm not saying it's going to be like, because there's a lot of elements in it that still, the Flash running wasn't what we know the Flash to do when he's running. But, you know, that, I mean, the suit of the other Flash looked kind of crazy too, wacky, but it wasn't these flaming colors. It was graded in. So it kind of felt like everything was sort of grounded instead of this color flash, and then nothing's balancing out. You feel like everything's floating like a PS2 game. This felt much more grounded, even though there was a lot of CGI in it. And the point I'm making is a lot of these movies can be retroactively fixed. And then you use them as a promotion for an upcoming movie. So you have these movies lined up, boom, 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 boom. And since they're built on the Snyderverse anyway, because that's actually built off of Man of Steel. That movie's built off of Man of Steel. I heard Blue Beetle is also kind of built off of Man of Steel. All right. You can use these versions, and you can run them with Man of Steel, you can run them with BVS, you can run them with whatever. You run them with the successive movies from the Snyderverse, and they'll start to complement each other. But you need a continuity, you need that interwoven mesh, you know, and you need an organic sort of nature to fit the whole thing together. But obviously, if a YouTuber could do this, all right, we have YouTubers doing tremendous jobs and getting that tone back. You see, one thing about the tone, Wonder Woman, for example, 2017, it had the grounding and tone of what Zack Snyder had set. Even the Suicide Squad had the tone and grounding of what Zack Snyder said. So the feel and the look felt more like it. Even when you move away from it, like even people said a lot, the Black Adam kind of reminded them of a Man of Steel a little bit. And that's because, again, the grounding and tone. Now, some of the VFX in Black Adam, like in the Flash and so on, was not properly done. They tried real hard with the VFX, but they still didn't get it. It felt like uncanny valley stuff going on, especially in the action scenes, and even with the slow-mo, they didn't quite get it, right? And it's because you need to have certain other visual effects going on to imitate the physics of real movement. And once they get that down, it really helps a lot, because it helps the believability of the movie. Because the universe that Zack made, it was a grounded universe. When you try to kind of move out of that and do the wacky tunes and jokes, even Shazam, it was kind of, Shazam didn't work because, again, you're not grounding the universe. You know, even the first Shazam movie, people don't really gravitate to it because it felt very unreal in terms of, even as a comedy, you want to ground the comedy. What makes comedy funny, you know, is grounding it. Once you ground it in some sort of reality. And that's the problem with Shazam as well. It didn't ground itself properly in reality. So that even if you want to be funny, you got to ground the thing, you know? And so I think that alone will help these movies to buoy up, and actually the directors can still tell their stories, and you let the directors kind of re-edit the movies a little bit. You know, you sit down with the editor and re-edit the movies, just cut out certain parts and stuff. And you got movies people will actually go see. I would actually watch that version of The Flash. I would actually watch it. You know, I heard it had a lot of really stupid parts in it, but the only thing with The Flash is like his suit's like, what the hell are you doing? The body fitting suit is like, oh my God, it's so kind of gayish. But anyway, I know that was the general design for the Flash suit anyway. It's just the way how they made it, it wasn't cool. You know what I mean? Even though it was kind of okay, but it wasn't cool. You know what I mean? And even the intro, I saw the beginning of The Flash with the jokes and stuff. I could pass with that. I'm letting those things go. But the running, he wasn't run. What the hell was that? What the hell was that? What they were doing with him running? It just didn't look good. It just looked terrible, you know? All right, so point number 8 is you don't want to waste the characters and actors already established in the universe in previous films, even if they flopped. So that's why I said you want to use everything that you have. You use the characters that you have, you know, and you can move them from one universe to another universe in the multiverse, so you can get different versions of that. What I did was I looked at Justice League, for instance, Justice League Aquaman. And on Twitter, I sort of superimposed him with the other Aquaman from Zack Snyder's Justice League. And of course, the other Aquaman was much more serious, much more concerned, much more thoughtful. Whereas the other one in Justice League was more making jokes. He was much more. You can see Jason Momoa was enjoying himself making those jokes with the lasso of truth, right? He was having a good time. You could tell because he was smiling and stuff. So, you just have two different versions of the same character, and that brings variety. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you try to, what Warner Bros. Has to understand is they have the best of both worlds, because what they kind of did by accident is they introduced two different versions of the same character. But because you're in the multiverse, that's okay. That can happen. So that's why I'm saying that they still can go forward with the Snyderverse. Even if more people watch the Snyderverse, it doesn't matter, because here's the thing. They go watch the Snyderverse, right? And that just jumpstarts the Gunverse, because the Gunverse is going to ride off of that. And sometimes, just like with Thor, the Thor movies and stuff, the Thor movies that came after Infinity War and stuff, they literally rode the wave of Infinity War. Infinity War helped those movies, even though those movies were trash, right? It helped them. Even the Miss Marvel films and stuff that were trash, but it helped them because you got Infinity War. People bought into, we're going to get something big. They delivered, and because of that, now people was willing to watch some trash. They didn't mind watching the trash because they were happy, right? Until some other big event happens. And this is the same thing that has to happen with the DC EU, I call it, the Snyderverse, versus the DCU, which is Gunverse. The Gunverse just needs to get up and popping. And it ain't going to get up and popping without the Snyderverse. It can't happen, right? Zack Snyder brings a certain energy, a certain excitement. You shouldn't be jealous of him. You should use him and write what he's doing. And take your movies and get your movies up to the point where they could gross more than his movies, because they're writing off of his movies. Because what you want to do, and this is what they didn't understand, like the studio didn't understand this. Man of Steel, BVS made more than Man of Steel, right? But not as much, made more profit even. Suicide Squad made more profit than Man of Steel and BVS. It was a shit movie, but it rode off the wave of BVS. And it sort of gave audiences something different from what the tone of those two movies. Wonder Woman wrote off the profits of BVS, Man of Steel, Suicide Squad. So it incrementally made even more profit on those two. Warner Bros. Should never have changed what happened with Justice League. But in spite of Justice League being changed, and it's a shit movie, as far as I'm concerned, it still grossed 600 and something million because it was riding off that wave. Even when they changed it, it rode off the wave. And the wave still percolated to Aquaman. And Aquaman, I don't consider Aquaman cinema. I mean, it is sort of cinema. It's wacky cinema. You know what I mean? Ain't got no take home nothing. But that just because it was aligned with the Snyderverse, it peaked. It's the highest grossing DC movie of all time. It peaked. And if Shazam was allowed to ride the wave, we knew that, Snyderverse is still there. I mean, David Sandberg was trying to ride the Snyderverse. It would have peaked even higher. And so on and so on. The movies would have just kept on going up and up and up. But the studio decided, no, we don't want nothing to do with the Trinity, nothing to do with that. And they just cut the Snyderverse short. Now, you had another opportunity back in 2021 when the Snyderverse put out. Everybody was saying spectacular things. People were all positive critics, everything. You got goodwill, right? James Gunn's Suicide Squad came right after. Didn't ride the Snyderverse. So let's talk about Superman or something like that. So went down in the crapper, right? You had that opportunity with Black Adam that came the year after. Black Adam had the opportunity because it was the movie that was closely aligned to the Snyderverse. Felt like a Snyderverse movie. All you had to do was link it to Zack Snyder's Justice League, and away you go. Nope, didn't do it. Dropped the ball, right? Made $393.3 million, but didn't get over the hump. It flopped, right? Everybody's talking about, they abandoned the Snyderverse. It was going to restore the Snyderverse. No, you wasn't going to restore shit unless you put in Snyderverse Superman with the Snyderverse theme, and we have it. I have it. I can pull it up for you guys to see what that sounds like and everything. It's great. Somebody actually did a edit of it, 2 edits of it. The same company, which is Molivier or whatever it is called. They did 2 edits of it. They did the first edit with just Hans Zimmer's dum 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 dum, and then they did a second edit with Hans Zimmer's and Junkie XL's dum 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 dum, and they mixed in also John Williams' score with that dum 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 dum, because I told you guys that they both can play with each other. They can actually play both of them together, and they actually match up. And he did both of them, and it was crazy. And that ending would have been nuts, and it would go straight into Black Adam's theme, because Black Adam's theme also matches Man of Steel's theme. So you would have had 3 different themes. It would have been sick, because dum 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 dum, and then Black Adam starts with Black Adam's theme is dum 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 dum, right? So that matches up with Man of Steel. And John Williams' theme is dum 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 dum. So all 3 themes actually are related to each other once you put them in the same key. So you got dum. You was doing the minor key, so you gotta do dum 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 dum, and then dum dum dum. And while that's going on, dum 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 dum. You also have Hans Zimmer's theme, which is I'm blanking out for a minute. I don't know why. Hans Zimmer's theme is it is dum 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 dum. It would be dum dum da da dum da dum da dum da dum da, right? So that would have been Hans Zimmer, and then you have dum da 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 da. So you have all of that. That just, so you start with the Hans Zimmer theme right there. The John Williams theme, they come in together, boom, and then it hits into that's the credits rolling, right? And that would have been it. It would have fit so beautifully. And a guy actually did it. He didn't do the Black Adam theme after, though. He just kind of ended it with a right? He ended the Hans Zimmer theme, but it was so sick. I mean, he did restore the Snyderverse. It's crazy. But all I'm saying to you guys is, like, they dropped the ball, man. They dropped the ball. You know what I mean? Integrate the thing. Integrate it. Nah, it's what it is, man. All right. So what I am suggesting is that by releasing Zack Snyder's Justice League in IMAX globally, notice I said IMAX. I didn't necessarily say in cinemas. I said specifically IMAX, because IMAX makes most money. But you could put it in cinemas too if you want. But I'm sure Warner Bros. Can get a deal with IMAX. That's why I'm saying this. And they could just put it into IMAX in certain select countries which make the most money, or they would love it. So like you drop it in IMAX in Brazil, you know the Brazilians love that shit. You know, you put it in UK, you know, you put it in the United States, you put it in China. China can take it. China will love this movie. So I'm just saying, you put it in select theaters in big markets. Of course, you bring it to my country too. I know, because I want to see it in IMAX, but I don't know if I'd be privileged enough to see it. But I'm just saying, you target certain areas globally that you know are the main markets, and you drop it down there. You advertise a little bit, so you spend a little more money on advertising, you know. But you let social media blow up. You let the fans kill it for you as well. You still do your advertising and stuff, but I'm just saying. And then you just let people go see it. And man, this would be so crazy. So what I'm saying is, off of that, you continue the other Snyderverse stories, but you also continue the other DCU stories. But here's the thing. This is where the difference lies. You let the directors work with each other, giving expertise in different areas to help each other create the best possible product instead of executive notes. You're still going to have to face the executives each individually. But what I'm saying is to get the best possible movie. This is what Zack Snyder was going to do with the other directors. And this is what James Gunn should do with all the directors that is under him that he'll be hiring, as well as network with Zack Snyder, network with David Ayer, network with these directors. Because what's happening is we're getting all these fucking executive notes, and it's screwing up. Sorry about the F-bomb. It's screwing up all these directors. Andy Muschietti had a good movie going, and then they messed up the man's movie. James Wan is having a problem with James James Wan is having a problem with James Gunn right now, who's trying again. He's just fucking up his man's movie. Okay, you had Cathy Yen, who was doing Birds of Prey. Obviously, Cathy Yen wanted to go. I know these directors will not say anything because it won't work in Hollywood. Patty Jenkins took it like a hero and walked. But I know Patty had a hard time also. I know it. Right? And these execs like I'll curse. I don't want to curse. Jeff Johns, man, this guy, man, what is this dude doing? Giving notes to people and stuff like that. This dude blocked Zack Snyder from getting his Green Lantern because this dude, he's the one that blocked it. Okay, you shouldn't have no clout or no say to tell people what to do with the characters you wrote. You're just a writer, man. This dude been messing up DC for the longest while. I pray God they just would do nothing with this guy right now. Let this guy take a 5, chill in the corner, because none of his movies have made a profit when he's in control, and he has been in control. He had a big say in DC. And DC's been going down the crapper since. All right. And the last and final point. I'm only taking an hour, 11 minutes, and 24 seconds. That's good. The last and final point I have. Point number 10. You're satisfying the audience by doing this. If you put Zack Snyder's it's never too late. You put Zack Snyder's Justice League into cinemas come October or November before your Aquaman movie. You're going to satisfy the audience. And how you can also continue to know is by doing polls, or have fans do polls to get feedback from the audience, particularly the paying audience, of what it is, how they feel about these movies, etc. Need to do some more data. You have to connect with your audience. As Greg Silverman would say, the audience is your boss. They pay you. Okay. Unfortunately, these, like I said, I'm gonna give mad props to the strikers right now, because they're not taking it anymore. These people who do the least amount of work, yes, they help put up the money, but they do the least amount of work, when it comes to movie making, and who are not connected, not necessarily people who love movies, are the people having the biggest say and the biggest paycheck. No, something's wrong with that. Something is wrong with that model. So I respect all the strikers and people who are striking right now. And, a lot of these people who are striking, they don't get nothing from the profits of the movie. They get paid in advance. They have no percentage from the movies. And even when some of them have a percentage, the companies now are concealing the accounting. They're not being transparent with them, so they could rob them of the royalties they're supposed to get from the movies and the profits of the movies. And this is the kind of nonsense that's been going on in Hollywood. So I'm all for the strikers. I'm all for SAFTRA. I'm all for the Writers Guild striking. These people have been treated like trash. We know Chris Wozniak, Wozniak, they stole the man's script to do the Batman movie, and they don't want to compensate this dude. That's not right. All of these things are not right, and they've been dirty and like this for years in Hollywood. And so I'm happy that they're striking, and I hope they keep the fight going, because you're not going to be replaced by machines, and the kind of crap they're putting out, nobody ain't going to go watch it anyway. You know what I mean? So let's get back to Psalms 128, 1 and 2 before I wrap this up and I call it the end to the stream. Nobody else came on here. Like I said before, people can hop on here as a guest. The link is in the chat section. If you want to say your piece after hearing all of this stuff, feel free to do so. Okay, feel free to do so. Let me just go back to this piece of scripture here. I want you guys to hear what I said in the scripture, because the scripture It makes sense. It says, how happy are those who fear the Lord, all who follow his ways. Meaning, like what I said earlier on, I said that the directors should be working with each other. They shouldn't be fighting each other. They should be working with each other, you know, and collaborating with each other and getting advice from each other. Because I could clearly see in the Flash movie, I could clearly see in Justice League 2017 that Joss Whedon was not on the same page with Zack Snyder. He didn't understand how the Flash is supposed to be conducted. He didn't understand how Batman was supposed to be conducted. He didn't understand like what Zack was doing effect-wise, or with the VFX team and with the action team and with the stunt coordinating team. He didn't understand. And this knowledge needs to be passed on, and people need to work with some of these people who actually do the work. What made Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 2017 special was the fact that the actors had to train. They had to do all this work with the stunt coordinating team. And on top of that, they had to, you know, get the visual effects properly done. And even then, they didn't use Zack Snyder's visual effects. And I mean, you know, Patty had her own company, but it could have come up much better. And of course, let just Jeff Johnson he's just an advisor. Let the directors carve the way how the story is really being told. Because I truly believe Patty had something much better for the ending of Wonder Woman, but she lost that battle apparently. And less executive involvement in these movies. You're an executive to facilitate. You're not an executive to try and tell people what to do with their movies. You don't know shit about movie making, so shut up. I know a lot of these executives are financiers, but still, come on now. So, that's what I got to say. And again, based on the scripture, it says, all who follow his ways, you will enjoy the fruit of your labor, how happy you will be, how rich your life will be. In other words, if you follow the way of justice and goodness, which is a very rare thing in Hollywood, but if you follow the way of justice and goodness, meaning you try to be collaborative, you try to work with other directors, you try to support other directors, you know, the creatives, I think, can do quite a lot. I know there's still a vetting process that a movie has to go through, but at the end of the day, the creatives, a lot of the time in screenings, these fucking critics go into screenings, and these critics are the ones that are screwing up a movie. Not always is the critic's view the audience's view. And Warner Brothers, I don't know who they have going to do their screenings, but y'all need to get some fresh people for your screenings that are more representative of your paying audience. And again, I said paying audience. Okay? Because people are not going to put out their good money when they can see the stuff for free. They're not going to put out their money to see your films in the cinema if they're not good. And we know critics don't always get it right. Okay? The critics don't always get it right. So if I was you, and there's a lot of people who will say, oh yeah, that's a great movie, and it wasn't a great movie. Okay. So y'all need to up your game in terms of y'all need to look at the real audience, get real people. For real people, not people necessarily enthusiastic to see the Flash movie, not people necessarily just people from the general audience and a demographic that would probably go see these movies. But you don't want the ones that just want to see the movies all the time. You want to get people who not really necessarily watch movies, or or go in the cinema and watch movies, but they're just general moviegoer. You want people from different backgrounds, people who probably be interested in DC if it was putting out something good, because you're not getting people who are representative of the people who actually want to come see your movies. You're not bringing those people out. Definitely not when you're screenings. So anyway, that's what I got for you guys. I am Christ I Am Disciple. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Share. You can also speed up the video. I know it's the end of the video. I shouldn't say that. But 1.5x is really great to go through this video, and it'll take much less time. Maybe take a half an hour to 45 minutes. We'll catch you guys later. I am Christ I Am Disciple. I thought I'd share this with you guys. Peace.